Hello, and welcome everyone to today's webinar, How New York-Presbyterian, Columbia University Irving Medical Center used AI to cut wait times by 8% while allowing for 25% more same-day add-on patients. Before we begin, I'm just going to walk through a few quick housekeeping instructions. We'll begin today's webinar with a presentation, and we'll have time at the end for a question and answer session. You can submit any questions you have through the webinar by typing them into the Q&A box that you see on your screen. Today's session is being recorded and it will be available after the event. You can use the same link you used to log in today to access the recording afterwards. If at any time you don't see your slides moving or you have trouble with the audio, first try refreshing your browser. You can also submit any technical questions into the Q&A box and we'll do our best to help. Lastly, you'll find a few other engagement tools on your dashboard, so be sure to check out your resources section and fill out our survey. And with that, I am so pleased to welcome today's speakers. Justin Guy is the Operations Manager for the Adult Infusion Center at New York-Presbyterian, Columbia University Irving Medical Center, and Catherine Lena Santana is the Chemotherapy Verification Coordinator at the same location. Justin and Catherine, thank you again for being here today, and I will turn the floor over to you.
Wonderful. Thanks for the introduction. So today we're just going to be talking about a few things. We're going to be talking about New York-Presbyterian Columbia, our organization, some of the challenges that we faced during our Infusion Center overview, and then how iQueue came into play and what we did in the template enhancements. Finally, we'll talk about some of the results that we saw after implementing some of the scheduling templates from iQueue, and then some lessons to share after reflection. Finally, we'll be ending it with the Q&A to kind of go back and forth with the audience. So a little bit about us, who is New York-Presbyterian Columbia. So New York-Presbyterian is one of the most comprehensive academic healthcare centers in New York metropolitan area. And we are in partnership with Weill Cornell Medicine, as well as Columbia University College of Physicians and Surgeons. So we do quite a lot of front edge care here at New York-Presbyterian. And more specifically about our sites, the Herbert Irving Comprehensive Cancer Center is in conjunction with the New York-Presbyterian Columbia University Medical Center. And here we do a lot of front-end cancer research, as well as the delivery of the care here in our infusion centers. So we have 3 infusion centers here. We have our largest one, which is our Adult Infusion Center, and then our Adult Research Infusion Center, and then our Therapeutic Infusion Center, with a total of 70 chairs, seeing about 150 to 170 patients on any given day. We are one of 51 NCI designated cancer centers in this country, and within New York-Presbyterian, we are the sole NCI designated cancer center. So some of the challenges that we faced coming in, I want to kind of discuss a little bit here. The first one was that when we started kind of working with iQueue really in depth last year, the scheduling templates were outdated. They were primarily built in 2021, which meant that they were based off of 2020 data. And so since 2020, our cancer center and our infusion center has grown quite a bit, and the different populations based on the physicians has also changed. So that resulted in a really big need for us to be able to kind of do an overhaul. When we were looking at the utilization rate, because the templates were not built to sustain this increase in volume, our utilization rate was at 105%. Clearly, that means that we were being way over capacity of what the template was meant to be. And so that was also one of the reasons why we needed to kind of take a look at how we can enhance that. The second challenge, the patient wait times were negatively affecting patient satisfaction. I think this is twofold, because the patient wait times, because the scheduling template was not being as efficient as possible with our current volume, patients were waiting extremely during wait peak times as well. And we'll kind of dive into a little bit about how this template impacted our wait times later on in this presentation. But obviously, as patients wait longer, the patient satisfaction goes down. And so these were some of the big highlights that we had in a lot of our patient responses about their feedback of our infusion center, is that the wait times really played an impact in their care. And so that was one of the driving factors of why we needed to enhance the templates. Thirdly, we had a substantial wait list for patient appointments to be scheduled. In scheduling templates, one of the biggest things as a control setting is that the duration of the appointments, there's only X amount per different slot. And so just because you have a bunch of 4-hour slots and you have a bunch of 2-hour appointments requested, the 2 hours are not able to be scheduled into 4 hours. And so that kind of stresses the importance a little bit more about why we need to be accurate with the exact time slots that our patient needs. And so that is where we found one of the challenges is that there was a lot of scheduling conflicts that were arising because of the fact that our patients needed different slots in addition to patients needing different times that were not available for them. And so that was our third challenge that we wanted to tackle. And lastly, there was a new change in leadership here at the Adult Infusion Centers, and we really wanted to kind of get a partner on how we can really make the operations here more efficient. In addition, getting a pulse check with a company like iQueue to be able, who works with so many different infusion centers to see kind of how we can operate at the highest standard and compete with the other infusion centers. And so why do we want to study how AI can help us in this infusion center? The background statement is that we partnered with a third-party AI tool, iQueue, to develop an enhanced scheduling template that will improve the patient experience and also increase volume. We realized the opportunity in being able to be more efficient while also improving the quality of the output that we're providing. And so the purpose here is that we'll be exploring the benefits of an enhanced scheduling template that was based off historical volume and patterns, in addition to how do we develop a framework for this, right? And the goal is to increase utilization, efficiency, improve patient satisfaction in a busy infusion center like ours. So here's the nitty-gritty and the methodology, right? To begin with anything, you need to know your infusion center and develop the framework that LeanTaaS needs to kind of work its magic. The framework we used was based on a variety of different industry standards. So for infusion centers, a lot of the times they look at the turns per chair. And so for us, our goal was to do 2.5 turns per chair. And then you have to look at the staffing and the nursing aspect, right? And so the nursing aspect of it, the Oncology Nursing Society stated that infusion centers should be looking at about 6 to 8 infusions per infusion nurse. And so we kind of went in the middle and did 7.5. Now, when we did a kind of analysis of how many chairs and how many nurses we have, we saw that both of them kind of equaled out to the same thing, 120 to 125. So that was kind of like our target when it comes to the infusion that we want to complete. So that was kind of like our framework and what we wanted, right? And then the next was, how do we factor in the no-show rate? And so the no-show rate, when we looked at the data through the past year, we averaged about a 14% no-show rate. And so what that means is once you factor that in, you are shooting for 138 appointments to hopefully end up with 120 to 122 completed infusions. And so by developing this framework, we're able to then bring that to LeanTaaS and iQueue and say, this is exactly what we are shooting for in terms of volume for the infusion center, given the chair capacity and the staffing resources that we have. And then that is when iQueue kind of does their magic in being able to say, okay, based on the data of the different 5 days, how do we reach that number in a way that we will never exceed 49 chairs at a given hour, right? Because that's our max capacity, and also be able to finish within operational hours. So our operational hours are 8 to 8:30. And so that is where the artificial intelligence kind of comes into play, is because it is so much puzzle piecing when it comes to an infusion center scheduling template. Different practices perform on different days. And so a busy sarcoma practice on a Thursday might be infusing 8-hour infusions compared to a Tuesday when a robust lymphoma clinic might be doing a lot of 2-hour infusions. And so what iQueue was able to do is be able to navigate this and look at the distribution rate of the different appointment slots that are utilized and say, okay, Tuesday, because the 2-hour slot was the most popular on that date, this is how many we need to do to be able to provide the patients with what they need. Compared to Thursday, when we need this many 8-hour slots for those long infusions for that practice that tends to practice more on that date. And that is kind of how we developed the meet is that, you know, my team and I were able to develop that framework for iQueue to then be able to kind of fill it in based on their algorithms. And so I'm going to hand it off to Catherine here to kind of paint the picture a little bit about how our results portray in real life.
Thank you, Justin. And yes, I'm going to touch upon our results, and you may ask, what did we find? So as you can see, we found a 10% decrease in average wait times. And what that reflects is into our patients spending about 10 minutes, more or less time sitting in the waiting area. And I know 10 minutes may seem trivial to some of you, but we do hear it from our patients that they appreciate this decrease in time. And just to explain a little bit about our patients come into the Infusion Center as a coordinated visit. And a coordinated visit includes a lab appointment where they get their blood work done. They may see their nurse practitioner or their oncologist after that. And following that, they come back up to the 14th floor to get their chemotherapy or infusion. While they're off our unit, they're seeing their doctor, their lab work is being processed, and their doctor is assessing them and clearing them for treatment. Once they return, now they're available to start their treatment and be assigned to a nurse. And when I tell you this, what I mean is to portray to you all of the variables and all of the factors that may be out of the Infusion Center's control, and to decrease their wait times by optimizing our template with iQueue is a noticeable improvement for the patients. Many of them have concerns about how they will be getting home, how their ambulance, for example, is already scheduled. So decreasing their time just by the template upgrade is such an improvement in their lives. Next, I'd like to talk about how we've been able to treat more patients a day with the help of iQueue. We have approximately a 6% increase in daily completed appointments. So it's safe to say that any cancer center wants to get patients treated quickly and efficiently because we want to promote the best outcomes for these patients. So this is especially beneficial for our patients that are recently diagnosed, for example. And it's just so comforting for them to hear, we've got your appointment set up for next week for you to start your chemotherapy. And that's exactly what we are aiming towards. As a patient, no one wants to hear that they have to wait weeks or months for an appointment. They should be focused on their healing journey, for example. So we're happy to be able to achieve this by treating more patients a day. Similarly, we saw a benefit of being able to allow up to 25% more patients as same-day add-ons. So a same-day add-on is a patient that is perhaps getting labs done that day and or seeing their doctor or nurse practitioner. Once their doctor assesses them or once their lab work is back, their provider may decide that they need to get some same-day treatment, for example, hydration or a blood transfusion or an electrolyte repletion. So it would be great if we can have these patients, since they are already in the facility, just go straight to the infusion center and get added on the same day. Now, if we were not able to, these patients may have to have a visit to the emergency room or would be sent home to wait for an available appointment either the next day or someday during that week. So with these upgrades to our templates, we've been able to add patients on the same day. This is very helpful also for our patients that are, for example, getting daily radiation and are unable to maintain a proper oral hydration. We are able to hydrate them in the infusion center intravenously on that same day. And of course, no one wants to pay a visit to the emergency room, and we're happy to be able to avoid that for our patient population. Next, I'd like to touch upon our scheduling capacity. We were frequently over our scheduling capacity, as Justin hinted to earlier. That meant that over 70% of days, we were overbooking our template. Using the data that LeanTaaS provided, we are able to have the correct number of appointment durations needed in our template. And they got that information from what we were completing historically. So now we are only over capacity 36% of the time. For example, on Wednesdays, like Justin earlier stated, for example, on Wednesdays, LeanTaaS showed to us that we were completing many 5 to 6 hour appointment slots. Now, that is directly related to our providers that are having clinic on Wednesdays and the treatments that they are choosing and prescribing for their patients. So on Wednesdays, we saw that we were treating many patients with 5 to 6 hour appointments and less of the 30 to 1 hour infusion appointments. So with LeanTaaS help, we were able to add the correct estimated number of appointments that we see of that 5 to 6 hour slot into our template and less of the 30 minutes. And then on the opposite side, on Fridays, LeanTaaS showed us that we were seeing many of our 30 to 60 minute short infusions and less of the 5 to 6 hours. So then we did the same. We added a lot of those 30 to 60 minute shorter infusions into our template and less of the longer treatments. So with the data that LeanTaaS provided, we were able to optimize our template and allow for more of the appointments that we need to be able to be scheduled. And this is all without having to overbook our template and without going above our template peak. In addition, this is also great for reducing nursing overtime, and it causes higher nurse satisfaction. And lastly, I wanted to mention our patient satisfaction. So we can't forget our patient experience, and this is really, what I do this. Despite all of our challenges, last year, our Q reviews, our patient satisfaction reviews, were 4.6 out of 5. This year, by enhancing our scheduling template, we know we're already averaging 4.7 out of 5. And that means two things. That means that we are providing excellent care, and it means that our operation is efficient for the patient. And I did want to share just one anecdotal finding. It's nice to hear from our scheduling partners that it's easy to find an appointment slot for the day that I need. I'm not having difficulty finding this appointment duration, and that they don't really need to reach out to us for escalations. So we're happy to see this change in that our overbooking request has dramatically reduced. And then this is part in due to the data that iQueue gathered and the template guidance they gave us. By having a template that's created geared towards the appointment durations that we see each day of the week, the schedule is really customized to the needs of the patient and the scheduler.
So what did we learn from implementing iQueue into our scheduling templates? Firstly, I think one of the biggest connotations with such a software is that it's a be-all, fix-all, but we quickly realized that you really need to be able to speak upon what your operational capacity is and see how LeanTaaS can then integrate their software into it, right? I think at the end of the day, it's all about what you know and how you can implement it within how you work. Knowing how many chairs you have, how much staffing you're supposed to be, and then utilizing that to say how much volume are we supposed to expect, and then utilizing LeanTaaS to get a pulse check of how it is in market comparison is where I saw it, right? And I think for different organizations, when they're evaluating the utilization of LeanTaaS, it's really important to think about where you see LeanTaaS coming in and helping you become more efficient. One of the other benefits I saw was that their operational calculations were seamless because of the fact that iQueue is able to kind of do this in the background while you're focusing on the various projects that you're overseeing. Anyone that is going to be implementing scheduling templates, I'm assuming, has a plethora of other responsibilities and might not be able to sit down and look at the historical data of the distribution rates of the appointment slots, or be able to calculate, on a given Monday, how many 2-hour slots we should have compared to 6 hours. I think when it gets to that nitty gritty, especially when you have a large volume, it's hard to do without some of this technological support. And so that's where LeanTaaS really helped me, is be able to kind of, go to their page and be able to plug in the dates that I need and see kind of like a snapshot of how we were doing operationally during that time compared to, let's say, Q4 2022 or even 1 or 2 years back. I think it was, for me, it's been great being able to kind of rely on a software like LeanTaaS to be able to get me the data that I need in a second rather than having to run Epic reports or such and transferring it over into an Excel and trying to dig into that, right? I think for me, that's one of the parts that helped me the most. You also realize that you can make the most out of the resources you have. Anecdotally, people say they never schedule infusions past 6 or 7 if you're closing at 8. However, we realize that there is a strong demand for these 30-minute injections or 60-minute infusions, and those, if given delays, can still be completed by the end of the day. And so, this really helps us by understanding what exactly we are capable of doing by seeing it kind of provided by a third party. And so that kind of ties into the whole operational capacity by looking at the data versus gut feeling, being able to understand that we are able to do this on contrary to what other people may have been saying historically about infusion centers and scheduling. Finally, one of the most biggest surprises for me was that it's not just a one-time thing, right? The scheduling template, as schedulers come and go, there needs to be kind of that training support and the ability to provide that perspective to it. And that's where I really, was surprised because when scheduling template enhancements are always a big change management initiative. And for LeanTaaS to be able to kind of be a partner that I can host sessions with, right? We made lots of scheduling sessions with different schedulers about why the change is needed and how we all play a role in driving this change with LeanTaaS. And so, it's been a great partnership with them and being able to harmonize practices within our organization and be able to perform at the highest that we can be so that we can treat patients in an efficient manner and deliver quality care. And so for me, that was part of the biggest surprise out of the lessons is how involved LeanTaaS really is in being supportive of your initiatives. And I think that's it. So we can open up the floor to any questions.
Yes. Thank you, Justin and Catherine, for a fantastic presentation today. We'll now begin today's question and answer session. So as a reminder, you can submit any questions you have by typing them into the Q&A chat box on your webinar console. So I will pull up some of the questions here and get started. First question would be, have you all seen an uptick in nurse satisfaction or nurse retention after implementing iQueue?
Yeah, so nurse retention, I think in the infusion center, nurse staff satisfaction is quite high. And so our retention has been pretty stable for the most part. And staff satisfaction, I think it's twofold, right? I think not only are the nurses more happy seeing this kind of evened out instead of the 10 to 2 rush where we have a plethora of patients in the waiting room, they kind of are able to keep that pace sustained throughout the day rather than feeling inundated, especially during their lunch. And then the other side of it would be the schedulers. I think the schedulers play a huge piece to this puzzle in trying to figure out what can the patient achieve in this appointment availability, and then what the doctor is able to accommodate, and then what we are able to accommodate, right? At the end of the day, all our availabilities are not the same availabilities of every single patient. And so the schedulers are in quite a bind. And for them to be able to tell us that they are facing way less barriers in getting a successful appointment that works for their patient, to us is music to our ears. And I think, we track a lot of the scheduling conflict discrepancies within our infusion centers. So when schedulers face a barrier to getting what they need, we do keep track of those, and we've reduced it significantly from a few hundred to now maybe 17 in a given month. And 17 in a given month, provided that we have over 120 patients on any given day, is good.
Thank you. All right, next question here. How have the scheduling and nursing teams managed patient expectations around having new scheduling guidelines, maybe pushing them to some new times?
Yeah, so one of the biggest things I think is transparency. I think, historically, there's been kind of a disconnect when it came to actual appointment times or just come as you seek. And I think being able to print the appointment times out for the patients has set realistic expectations because it lists it all out for you. I think it shows you when you're seeing your doctor and then when you're seeing the infusion appointment time. And I think that's been a huge upgrade for us because prior it would just be come as early as you can and we'll fit you in somehow. I think, you know, speaking to different patients who get upset about, you know, the shift from first come, first serve is that, you know, at the end of the day, when it's first come, first serve, someone is going to be heavily impacted by it and significantly delayed. And so, you know, by sticking to these appointment times, they're set for a reason to keep the flow going so that you don't have to wait and face delays in addition to the person next to you not facing delays. And I think it's worked great in being able to be transparent in our expectations and being able to kind of have the nurses buy-in is a huge piece of that. You know, showing them how our wait times have decreased means the world because now the patient is not as furious sitting in that chair after waiting for so long.
Wonderful. All right, I know we have a customer success manager on the line from LeanTaaS as well. So we have a few questions that might be better suited to your expertise. Two that are kind of related to each other. One, is iQueue integrated with your EHR? And do you have to have a specific EHR in order to partner with iQueue?
So for us, it is integrated in the fact that I believe the data from Epic transfers over to iQueue, in which iQueue then does the data analysis. You know, the physical template making, we get the template from iQueue, but then build it ourselves. So I think it's kind of one direction data flow right now, but it works great in that it's constantly updating based on what Epic our EHR currently has. And I think I've kind of exposed it by now, but yeah, we do utilize Epic as our EHR vehicle.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Justin. This is Dakota from iQuue, as mentioned, customer success manager who works really closely with MIT Columbia. And just to add on to what Justin said, provide a little more context, there's not really a direct integration from the iQuue side into the EHR. So for example, an Epic or a Cerner, we work very closely with those different EHR types. And so we definitely can receive data from that end. And that informs how we build the templates, that informs all the information that flows into the platform. And so we are able to accommodate different EHR types. And so we are able to take information in and then flow it out into a recommendation for a template that can then be built into your EHR, such as Epic or Cerner.
Thank you. Helpful. All right. Next up, does the iQuue template offer information regarding appropriate number of infusion chairs per nurse?
Yeah, so I can maybe provide a little more context on that. When we think about building templates for a specific center, so for Columbia, for example, we receive a lot of information, both historical and also daily information that kind of flows into the platform. And so when we think about building the templates, it's less so maybe a number of chairs for a nurse, but it's more so considering the demands of the center itself. And so what the population looks like on a given day of the week, for example, based on provider availability, the nursing staff, as well as factors such as nurse lunch breaks or the appropriate number of nurses that the center feels comfortable, rather a number of patients the center feel comfortable having for each nurse at a given time. And so those are all factors that come into play, of course, along with parameters like operating hours or number of chairs available that we consider when we're building the templates. And so that all goes into the machine learning algorithm that outputs what is an optimized template to make sure that the most patients can be seen in a day, but in a way that's comfortable for the center and meets all center goals.
Wonderful. All right, well, moving right along here. Thank you all for the questions, by the way. Next up, do you use actual infusion times for each of the different types of infusions to modify the template durations? And do you find yourself tweaking those template durations, consistently or based on new data?
Yeah, great question. So we receive the infusion times based on, conversations with the center itself. And so it's marked, of course, in the EHR, but also in conversations, we'll understand, okay, so for this type of infusion or this type of infusion, what's the expected duration? So if an infusion is typically 5 or 6 hours, we can mark that as the expected duration in the app and then create slots based on that duration. If these need to be modified, so if, for example, you're finding that what you expected to be a 6-hour duration might be closer to 4 hours, that would flow through the app. We have cycle time valuations, and so you can see if the 6-hour appointments are consistently 4 hours, then that can be something that we update and then create the appropriate slots to accommodate for that change. And so it's more of it can be a two-way street. So if you find that, we see on our end that the cycle times look very short for that appointment, and we can make those changes, or if the center itself notices that there's a more appropriate type of duration, then we can make those changes on our end and have an updated template to reflect that.
Yeah, just like what Dakota was saying, we look at those cycle times quite a bit, and if we see the 4-hour duration slots kind of running too short or too long, we kind of try to do a deeper dive into, we then go to Epic and then try to figure out exactly which type of treatment regimens tend to be on the shorter end of those appointment slots, right? I think we also kind of tweak these template durations based on this data and the template itself. My team and I try to reevaluate all new scheduling templates every 3 months or so, just because it takes a little bit of time for new templates to take into effect. And so we kind of do a pulse check for every template enhancement every 3 months to see, okay, are we moving towards the right direction? And that's where me and Dakota kind of look at those numbers and see if anything needs to be changed when it comes to the type of slots we have or the different days in general.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Next question for the NYP team here. Justin or Catherine, maybe you want to jump in. How are you able to build in nurse lunch times into the schedule using iQueue?
Thank you, Sarah. And yes, so as Dakota touched upon earlier, we are able to add lunch times into the template. And that's kind of just by kind of making sure some of their morning appointments are ending at those times that the nurses are saying they go to lunch, and then resuming the appointments right after that. We don't really do that in our larger infusion center. We see close to like 135, 120 patients a day. So we don't really see the need for that in our infusion center right now. But in one of our smaller one, where we only have approximately 12 chairs and like 5 to 6 nurses, we do try to do that there so that so everybody's able to take their lunch and we don't have a lot of patients at that same time.
Thank you. All right, moving along. Next question is, how much lag time do you schedule between physician appointments and infusion appointments? Is there a mandatory or a specific amount of time between the two appointments that works best for the templates?
Yes. So we ask right now for about an hour. So from the doctor appointment, we request there to be an hour later for the chemo appointment. It's not mandatory, but it's just a request. And most people do stick with that.
All right, thank you. We're coming probably to the end here unless anyone wants to add some more questions, but the final one I have on my list right now is, how did you all at NewYork-Presbyterian get leadership buy-in for partnering, with an outside organization as a technology solution? Like, how did you maybe have that conversation, and how do you keep leadership engaged so they know the value?
I think it's a blend of subjective and objective information, right? I think, everyone hears it all the time. The patients are complaining of long wait times and therefore, but being able to take that subjective and look at the objectiveness of it and looking at our average wait times and then what we are physically capable of doing and seeing the peaks and troughs in the data points, I think really is the buy-in for our leadership team, right? Being able to see that we can take this many patients, and we could do it in a more efficient way that decreases patient waiting time. I think for us, that was the main thing that helped the leaders realize that this type of tool was necessary, was that we can sustain, and in fact, we can increase volume by just working the numbers and using this data to guide us to where we need to be.
Thanks so much, Justin. All right, that looks like the end of the question list that we have. So that would conclude today's presentation. I just want to thank Justin and Catherine again for their time and all of the excellent information. To learn more about the content presented today, please check out the resource section on your webinar console, and also please fill out the post-webinar survey. Thank you so much again for joining us today, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.